Come on with me. You've arrived at the oldest still standing wooden military building in North America. This is it. This is the place. And as you can see, there's the British flag on the flagpole. You know what that means? We're British.
We're British.
Yeah. For now. For now, we're British. And if you come this way, we'll talk about what was the British doing here on the Kennebec River in the middle of central Maine. What's going on? Come on. So here we are. You got to ask yourself, what was going on in the 1750s? Before the American Revolution, this was kind of the wilderness. There was no towns here, no houses. There were just a few settlements on the coast of Maine, and Governor Shirley in Massachusetts, because that's where we are, in Massachusetts, Governor Shirley was convinced that the French army was going to come up the Chaudière River, down the Kennebec River, and take over New England. They were going to take over in Maine, and they were going to be in charge. And Governor Shirley said, no, this is British land. This belongs to the king, King George. And so all of our militia had to get together and build forts up and down the Kennebec River to defend against the French. And so that's our job here at Fort Western, is to defend against the French. And how do we do that is we get the supplies for the soldiers at Fort Halifax. Fort Halifax is 17 miles up the river, and we're going to get all of their food, their ammunition, their guns, their blankets off the big ship that comes up the river, and we're going to load everything into smaller boats. You can see this is a flat bottom boat because all the water between here and Fort Halifax is shallow water. It's only a foot deep some places. And so we're going to put them into a smaller rowboat and row the last 17 miles. It's so much fun. Not really. We have had an opportunity to take a boat like this boat, from here to Fort Halifax, and it was a long, hard 17 miles against the current. And you know what? We didn't have 2 tons of supplies aboard the boat either. It was very hard for us 20th century people, but it gave us an opportunity to realize what these folks in the 1700s, what they were up against. So what was hard for me, do you think it was hard for them? What do you think? Were they human beings? Yeah. I think it was hard for them too. But we get to learn about history with experiments like this. We have artifacts like this old building and other artifacts. We have documents that we've discovered in different places. Boston, have to go to England to get some of these documents. to learn about what was going on at the fort and in Massachusetts in the 1750s. So 1754, the soldiers are here. They're moving supplies. That's our job. Okay, let's keep going. This is one of our oars that we use to move the boat. It's only 18 feet long.
18?
Yeah. Come on in. You guys can come in. Here, downstairs we've got a little display of the kind of supplies that were needed by the soldiers. You can see there's food here. Every soldier got a ration every day of a pound of salt meat, a pound of dried peas, I hope you like pea soup, and a pound of bread, a pound of hardtack, those ship's biscuits, you might have heard of them, that were so hard that you can't really chew them. That's 5 ship's biscuits in a pound. And still you can't eat it. But the food, all the food, the tools, extra oars, everything that the soldiers would need had to come up from Boston on a big ship up the river where there's deep water, and then during the summer they would take 8 boats, however many bateaus they had, whaleboats, big canoes, rafts, whatever they could put supplies on, and they would go up the river 17 miles to the next fort, unload all the supplies at the fort, and then come back and load up again. So we took one trip just for fun with no supplies, but these guys had to go up and back, up and back, up and back. I was looking at a document that said they made 5 trips in 10 days. Yeah, so up in one day and back in the next day. And now we can go upstairs and take a look at the artillery. All right. Now we're upstairs. Upstairs in the blockhouse, you can see there's windows. There's small musket ports that you can put your muskets through, kind of look out all the way around the fort. Gives you a good view of the river and all around the fort. Down below there's cannon ports, obviously for the cannons. 4-pound cannons here at the fort. We're not really sure how many cannons there were here. There's a sketch that we found of the fort that shows 12 cannons, 6 in each blockhouse, but I don't think they got all 12 because of the position of Fort Western. There's an English fort down the river, and there's an English fort up the river. The chances of anything getting through is really slim. So they had some cannons, but maybe not the full contingent of artillery. But it worked to keep the Indians away. The Indians never attacked the fort itself. The Abenakis would harass the English wherever they could. If there was a group of soldiers going out to cut firewood, they would shoot at the woodcutters. The boat going up and down the river, if there's not sentries to stop the ambush, they would come down and shoot at the boat. There's several documents, official reports of Indian attack on the boats, you know, this and that. But the Indians never harassed the fort itself, probably because of the cannons and because of the fortified position that we have. We've got the two fences, the open picket on the outside and the close picket on the inside. One of the soldiers' jobs on a slow day is to get mud and clay from the river and chink in between the logs of the picket fence. Oh boy, what a fun job. You want to be in some other outfit then, don't you? The cannons are really ancient. It's an ancient weapon. Real simple, no moving parts. It's just a tube. But this Flintlock musket is the height of technology. If you look right here, the Flintlock musket has a piece of flint. That's what gives it its name. But it also has a pan cover. The little piece of steel here that strikes the flint also shuts the pan, and it makes it so that you can walk around with a gun that's loaded. A loaded gun. That's a wonderful thing for a soldier. It's kind of nice for a hunter too. Walk around with a loaded gun. And if you put it at full cock, then when you pull the trigger, the flint strikes the steel and makes a spark like this. If you look right here. See the spark? That's what makes the gun go off. That's the ignition. Okay? And you wouldn't think that this is so modern, but the Flintlock musket is the ultimate in technology in the 1700s. It's so nice. Are you going to tell them about the dog lock? No? I'm going to tell them about the dog lock. This is an older model, and there's really not any difference to it. It has a dog here that will keep it at half cock, so you can't go off half cocked. The Brown Bess that I was just showing you has an internal mechanism that keeps it at half cock. The tumbler is undercut, and so it stays at half cock. This one is not so reliable, so they had a mechanical dog that would keep it. And then when you put it at full cock, the dog drops away, and you can fire the gun just like that. Pretty good. The flint made a spark 2 times. Wow. Sometimes it's not that reliable. I guess I was just looking at something. They were saying that in the 1700s, any gun is about 75% effective. So one day they had reenactors out here and they were shooting their muskets. It was more like 50% effective. So you have to, put a new flint in. If you need a new flint, you better have one in your pocket and replace that flint. So if you're a soldier, you need to have your equipment too, not just a gun, and ammunition, and 3 days worth of rations. But you have to have your screwdriver or turn screw. I just learned that. So the soldiers were here taking care of the supplies, keeping the supplies safe. The fort was military for about 12 years. And even after the French and Indian War was over, by 1763, the war was over, so there wasn't really any threat of French attack. But the soldiers stayed on because the settlers who were coming up and buying land, they wanted to know that this is a safe place. So the soldiers are here for a few years. Eventually, the fort was decommissioned, and Captain Howard, he was the commander of the fort. Captain Howard had an idea that if he had supplies to sell to the settlers, he could make money for his family. And he did. So he invested his resources, brought up supplies from Boston again, and started selling to the settlers. He eventually bought the fort buildings and started a general store. So we can go downstairs if you guys don't have any questions. Questions?
I'd like to know what a few of these things are.
Okay, this is like a cannonball, only it's more musket balls wrapped up in a bag.
So what's a musket ball? Something small?
Yeah, it's about the size of a marble. You can see it.
All right.
And that canister shot will actually blow apart, and it'll be like a shotgun when it comes out.
That's grape shot.
Grape shot.
And what are these things?
And that's a bandolier that holds gunpowder for your muskets to reload.
Oh, okay.
Reload the gunpowder.
Huh.
By the 1750s and 60s, almost nobody was using this. This is an antique.
Really?
By the 1750s, they were using rolled cartridges in a cartridge box. Technology moves on, huh? Right? That's the 4-pound shot that goes in the cannons. So it's not the cannon that weighs 4 pounds, it's the shot.
And these things here are just to load the cannon, or?
Those are the tools, yeah.
Tools to load the
Yeah.
cannon. And this is?
That's a powder horn.
Powder horn, okay.
Another way to carry gunpowder safely. If you clean out the cannon with the worm here, that's the first step. Clean it out. Then you can use the sponge, the wet sponge, to put out the sparks. Then you load the gunpowder with the ladle. Put in the the cannonball, not the musket ball, but the cannonball. Then you ram everything in with the rammer. And then when it's time to shoot, this is the trigger. You light this on a candle, and that's what makes the gun go off. This lights the fuse, and it's on a long stick so that you don't have to stand close to the cannon. That's a good thing.
Yeah, it is a good thing.
Yeah. I don't want to stand close to the
So it's
cannon.
a lot of work just to get ready to shoot one of those.
Oh yes, to do it safely, you really have to follow all the steps. Yeah. Building now. And this gives us an opportunity to look at the timbers that this place is made out of. And these are all hand-hewn timbers by the 800 soldiers that came up to build Fort Western and Fort Halifax. They cut the timbers down 20 miles down the river at Fort Richmond, where it was safe to do the work. They cut the wood, squared it up with an axe, and put all of the timbers into the river and towed them up with the bateaus, and then dragged them up here and built the buildings. Put the buildings up in less than a month. They started in March cutting the trees, and by July it was done, and they had the fort secure. But in the 1770s, this was a store. No longer a storehouse, but a store. And we have copies of the account books that were used at the store. It's really interesting to see what people were buying. They were buying on credit. And so this is what they bought here at the store, and this is how they paid their bill on the right. You can take a look at these. Just disregard all the rum. That they weren't really drinking all that rum, right? Except sometimes they did. The West India rum was for drinking. The Boston rum was to kill the lice on your head. You use it for shampoo.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
That's what I heard. I've never tried it. So we've got all kinds of tools over here, building supplies. First you have to, of course, cut the trees. That's the first step, because you can't go to the hardware store and get lumber. You have to provide your own lumber. So how do you get that? How do you do that? How do you get lumber?
Chop down trees.
Chop down trees, that's right. So we've got a tree chopper. What do you call a tree chopper?
An axe.
An axe, that's right. And this is the English style axe that was used in the period. Of course, you only buy the iron part. You have to make the handle. That's a good thing, because you can make a handle that fits you instead of the handle that fits me, right? This is a kind of a small blade, smaller than I'm used to, and I've chopped a tree before. Not a big one either. And this looks like it would be a lot of chops. My arms hurt just thinking about it. So that's the first step, is to clear the land, get the lumber, and then you have to move it around, maybe square up the timbers with a broad axe. I don't have a broad axe. And then you can put your house up, but I guess you need nails, right? Nails don't grow on trees, so we have nails here at the store. There's some iron nails, okay? Iron nails are made by the blacksmith. Why don't we get a bit better one for the film? These are actually made by a blacksmith. That one isn't. The iron nails are made by the blacksmith. Take a rod, you draw it out, make it longer and skinnier. Then you cut it off the rod and make the head. And you smash it down and make the head. And those steps is what a blacksmith needs to know, how to make a nail, but then you can make almost anything else. If you know how to draw it out, make it longer and skinnier, shorter and fatter, cut it with a chisel. That's all you need to know, right? You can learn the whole thing in 10 minutes. Because see how this is? This is part of a scythe that would, this would hold the handle of the scythe on the wood. And this is just a nail shape, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's easy, right? You know how to do that. And this is smashed down and made shorter and fatter. Yeah? So that's all you need to know. And welding. Of course it's welding. That's a whole different story. Well, that's a shaving horse. That's what we use to hold the wood steady while we're working on it with a draw knife. And the draw knife and the vise, those are really ancient tools. People have been using those for thousands of years. Really basic, woodworking tools, basic skills, but you can make tool handles, you can make furniture, you can make eating utensils, whatever, just with those simple tools. And the settlers, the frontiersmen that came up here with their families, they had those skills. Maybe not enough skills to make hinges out of iron, but to make things out of wood, it's like you need to know that in order to move up into the woods, right? It makes sense. We've got a draw knife there. Okay, come on over here, we'll take a look at another department. Here's some groceries. Oh, good, groceries. There's olive oil in the big jugs. That's from the Middle East. Okay, the olives don't grow in Maine. Let's see, we've got sugar in the blue packages. You see the sugar in there? That's white sugar. I saw your eyes light up when I said sugar. Oh, sugar, yes.
Sugar.
Yeah. The people in the 1700s liked sugar too. They really liked sugar. And so they would actually use their skills, their woodworking skills, and make shingles, barrel staves, that's the parts of the barrel, these slats of wood that the barrel is made out of. And if you can make those out of wood and shingles, you can trade at the store, trade at the Howard store for sugar that grows in the West Indies. Sugar, rum, and molasses. Oh, they did such a business from the West Indies to New England. New England's wood products goes down to the West Indies, and up comes the sugar and rum. That's our symbiotic relationship, right? Over here is the clothing department. There's no clothing, just cloth. And so that means you get to pick a very nice piece of cloth for your dress when you're making a dress, because you have to make your own dress. So this right here, see this cloth, this piece of copper plate? See, it has George Washington. It's very patriotic. You might notice that we're no longer British. We're American now. In the 1770s, we had the American Revolution, and that means King George doesn't have anything over us now. We have a president. Do you know who our president is?
Don't look at me.
George Washington. And here he is on a piece of cloth. And we can make your dress out of George Washington and Lady Liberty riding in the carriage. Wouldn't that be great? She's not convinced.
It was so long ago.
Yeah. Well, you might have to make yourself a dress or make me a shirt or something like that. Here's some shoes. You want to buy some shoes? There's some nice shoes. The shoes don't have a left and a right. You can see they're just shoes.
They don't really have a tie either. I mean, it just flops over.
No, that's for your buckles.
Oh, your buckles, yes,
Yes,
that's right.
and the buckles come seperate. You have to buy the
you see them,
buckles.
the buckles in there?
Just barely see it in the case.
I didn't think of that.
Good. Yeah, you can buy shoes here. You can buy hats. Of course, before the Revolution, hats, tea, shoes, documents, almost everything had a tax to it. And now we don't have to pay any taxes to the king. We pay our taxes to George Washington. And that's better, right? Is that better? Yes, okay. Okay, it's better. He says it's better, it's better. We got some combs in here made from a cow's horn. The people can soften the cow's horn in water, leave it in there for a week or so, and it'll soften. And then you can cut all the teeth with a saw, make your own comb.
Wow, cool.
These coarse combs are for the ladies. They like to have their high hairdos, and those combs will keep their hairdos up in a do. And the finer combs, that's to get the lice out of your hair. Some people, men and women, would just shave their heads and get rid of the lice. Okay, now I'm all through with that batch of lice, and I can grow more hair.
More lice.
And so, have you seen pictures of guys with wigs on? And some of the girls used to wear wigs as well, because they would cut off their hair and just wear a wig, so they look fancy. Got to look fashionable, right? Got some leather breeches. Those are going to last longer than the linen breeches that I'm wearing. If I had to work real hard, I might wear these out, and I don't want to wear out my clothes, so I might have to buy some leather breeches that won't wear out as quickly. Got some ladies' goods. We got ribbons. Nice ribbons to decorate your hat.
Okay.
Yeah? See, the ribbon comes separate. You have to buy that separately. But then you can make your hat look pretty the way you want it to look, and you don't have to have a plain straw hat. The straw hat is to shade your face so that you don't get tanned or freckled, because it was not fashionable to have a tan face or your complexion dark or anything. You want to have a very white complexion. And if you do get tanned, you can always put makeup on. Sometimes they use lead oxide and mix a nice white powder. Whatever. Whatever works, right? Got a beautiful fan from the Orient. The fan for air conditioning. Does it work? Yeah, it works. And it's beautiful too.
It is.
It's useful. Now this accessory here is not very useful, but boy is it pretty. Look at that silk handkerchief. Did you feel it? Feel it.
Silver.
That also comes from the Orient, way over in China, where they produce silk. And this is so expensive that you don't want to blow your nose on it. You just hang it out your pocket like this and say, "Oh, look at me. I'm so fancy. Don't I look cool? I've got a silk handkerchief." And now I have to fold it up so that I don't get in trouble. There. Much better. Okay. Got some household goods here. More things that the blacksmith made. Got a door handle. Did you see any door handles? They're all on the doors. As we go through the house, you can see all those door handles, and the blacksmith had to make those. So when you're making your house, you got to have a good friend that's a blacksmith, right? There's plates, cups, coffee cups. Of course, after the Revolution, we didn't drink a lot of tea. If you look in the account books, the tea sales went way down around the time of the Revolution, and coffee sales went up. So most people were drinking coffee instead of tea because it looked better politically. And here's a cereal bowl for you to have. Oh, that's not big enough. I want a big cereal bowl, right? Yeah. I like a lot of cereal. That's for my porridge, for my oatmeal. Pots and pans to cook your porridge on. And in the case we have some knives. Now this stuff is made in New England, from New England clay. But this steel that makes these knives, we've got a pocket knife, a pen knife, a razor to shave your face with. You don't have to shave your face yet. No. This knife right here was used by the doctor, and that's what he used to bleed you with. Because if you had a fever, the doctor had to take about a cup of blood out of you, and so he would make a cut in your arm, and off you would go. Do you think it works? It's not really science, is it? He's mad.
Put a bottle in my mouth here.
Mad.
I'll quiet her down.
Mad baby. Mad baby. I see some locks and keys made by the locksmith. Fish hooks made by the blacksmith. Musket balls for your musket, right? And gun flints, because the flints have to be replaced from time to time. Yeah. See over here, these are also imported from England, knives and forks. The forks are just coming into fashion. Almost nobody was using forks in the 1600s, not even the king. And then the king says, well, maybe I don't want to get my fingers dirty, so he's going to use a fork to serve himself. And you serve your meat, serve your potatoes and your vegetables, and then you can shove everything onto the knife blade and eat that way. And so the fashion of clothes and the fashion of eating has all changed in 200 years. It's pretty interesting.
So they don't have spoons yet?
Oh yeah, spoons are very ancient. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's pewter spoon. And actually the poor people, the lower class, they might have one knife on the table, but most everybody's eating with spoons. Yeah. And so it wasn't until the later mid to late 1700s when everybody started using forks. And it looks like a pitchfork, like you would do with hay. But then later on, as time goes on, there's more times added, and we switch to eating with fork instead of eating with your knife. Fashion! Don't you love fashion? It's great. These are imported tea sets. This one comes from England. This is the Queen's pattern. Actually, Mr. Wedgwood, the Wedgwood company, made a nice mold. See the leaves here, and it looks like this is a twig. It's all made of wood, and this whole pattern was made in a mold, and it's a new thing. And they gave the Queen of England a tea set, and they said, "Oh well, this is a present for you." And then, because the Queen sets the fashion, everybody had to have some that looked like this. And so the Queen's pattern was very popular, very fashionable. Also from England, they had the tin teapot. It's not as pretty, but it's way more durable. See, this will break if it drops on the floor. This one won't break. So maybe I would go with the tin. They cost about the same. They're all imported, and pretty expensive to get tin until after the Revolution, and it was now legal for people to mine tin in the United States. Before of course, the rules, the king's laws, no tinware, no brass. You couldn't even make brass in the colonies. Yeah. So I'm kind of glad of the revolution, you know. We got some tobacco here. Oh, yummy tobacco, right? No, that's illegal. You can't buy tobacco. In the 1700s, most people smoked tobacco, men, women, children. You could just get a clay pipe and fill it with tobacco. In fact, one of the books I was reading, the doctors, this was a book about yellow fever plague, and the doctors would recommend to their patients, smoke a lot of tobacco, it's good for you.
Wow.
Fill the house with tobacco smoke. Or you could shoot guns in the house, and that would fill it up with smoke. And that's what passed for science in the 1700s. They had no idea what was going on most of the time. You could get tobacco here at the store. It's funny, if you look through the account books, the Howard store sold a lot of tobacco, but no pipes. They sold gunpowder, shot for the guns, gun flints, but no guns. So I don't know who was providing the pipes and guns, but somebody in town must have been. Got some spices over here from the Spice Islands. Here's a school book. You have to buy your own. School doesn't provide it. But this can be very handy, because this is a list of words to spell. And so if you get in here, you can know how to spell all the words. Every single word that you can think of is in the book, and you learn how to spell them all. I've looked through documents. The account book is a great example of creative spelling. They'll spell it three different ways, spell the same word 3 ways. And Noah Webster thought that maybe everybody should spell a word a particular way. And once that happens, then we begin to talk in a certain way. And we're not talking like Englishmen anymore. We're not talking like Frenchmen anymore. We're talking like Americans. So Noah Webster had an idea that maybe we should speak like Americans. And we do now. We can say PC and Apple and iPod and all of this. Yeah. So Mr. Howard, he had a great business here, taking things in trade. Not everybody had cash. In fact, there was very little cash going around in the northern Massachusetts where we live. And then sometime in the 1770s, they moved the store from this location, from this building, to another building. And Mr. Howard's son, William Howard, got married. So he grew up. He was here as a soldier. He was here when he was 14 years old, even before it was required for him to serve in the militia. But William Howard, after he grew up, got married here and decided that he wanted to fix up the barracks, what was the barracks in the fort, and move his family into this house as well. So let's take a look at the barracks, see how he fixed the place up. don't look at the British flag. Okay, come on through. Here we are in the parlor. This is the front parlor, the best parlor. And this is where the Howard family would entertain their guests. Now, if you had some people come to visit you, you really want to show off your best stuff, right? This is where you would do it. Bless you. See all the plaster on the walls? That's a big investment in the, because I don't think the soldiers' barracks had plaster and paint. They had very plain walls and the bare timbers showing. But Mr. Howard thought, yeah, I'm gonna invest in this house. I'm gonna make it look real fancy, and then he's got some nice furniture. Very fashionable furniture, even on the edge of the wilderness here, even on the frontier. These bamboo-style chairs are telling everybody, this guy knows China. He knows about the Orient. He knows about Chinese porcelain, the really fine china that people have tea sets and their plates and everything. And Mr. Howard was very rich because of the store, a couple of sawmills in town. He even owned a ship to take the boards and stuff produced in Maine down to the West Indies, trade for more molasses and rum to come back up here. And so he wanted to show off all his nice furniture, the bamboo-style chairs. He's got a beautiful card table here in the parlor, and even a carpet. See that? It's a rug. And we've got to document a probate inventory of everything that was in the house, and the carpet in the front parlor was the most valuable piece in the house.
Interesting.
Valued at $35.
Yeah. Wow.
Big deal, right?
Yeah.
Let's go in the back of the house. We can check out another room. Hello. Who's on the stairs? Now we're in the eating parlor, and the dining room from for the Howard family is where the family would take their meal. But still, we've got imported plates here. They're eating with forks and knives. How fancy is that? And look on the wall. There's another mirror. They can afford 2 mirrors in the house. How wonderful. They must be really rich. As far as the silver candlestick, that doesn't mean anything. It's the mirror that really shows what you own. Also on the inventory was listed 90 tablecloths. And so I don't know if they didn't sell well in the store, why he would need 90 tablecloths for one family. It could be an indicator of how often the laundry was done. I don't know. It might be just showing off. Look at all the tablecloths. That's Mr. Howard's desk. That's we had to track that one down and get it back into the fort. Nice desk that was taken away from him. It was held as surety in some kind of insurance thing. He had to go to court, and they said, well, we're keeping your desk until you show up so you can pay your bill. Yeah, it's like rent-a-center. Come and take your stuff. We can go across into the kitchen. You can go ahead. Go ahead. And you can tell this is the kitchen because of the size of the fireplace. This is much bigger than the fireplaces in the parlors, because this is a working fireplace. It's got a nice movable crane, the iron crane that comes out, and a bake oven on the other side. And that's likely the same kitchen fireplace and bake oven that the soldiers used. That would be a big job to change the bricks, the whole chimney configuration. It's much easier to change windows and partitions and doors and stuff. It's a nice place for the servants to take care of the Howard family. There were 7 servants taking care of the family. 5 family members, 7 servants to do their cooking and cleaning. Do you have any servants? No? Me neither. We have to make do on our own, but the Howard family was well-to-do, and so they could afford to pay these people or pay off their debts, and then the person would have to work for Mr. Howard for a certain number of years because Mr. Howard paid his debt. It's pretty cool. Okay, now we're going to go upstairs and check out the sleeping chambers up here. We're following you now.
Sifting through it. Wow.
Figuring out his picture right now.
Added bonus. This is an added bonus. We've got the archaeologist and our director and curator working at sorting and categorizing all these artifacts from the fort down the river, Fort Richmond. I see there's a lot of bones. These are all archaeological, help me say that word, archaeological artifacts from another fort, and you can see all the pieces of bone. That's what archaeologists dig up out of the ground to find out about the people who lived in the past. This is all clues. If you look at the bone and you see a knife mark, then you know it wasn't an animal that was killed by an animal. It was used a metal knife on it. And so all these little clues, they're just like detectives, these archaeologists. So here in the bedchamber, there's also some carved mahogany chairs for maybe a private business meeting. You wouldn't want to have a private meeting downstairs in the parlor because that's a public space. And so the gentleman that stayed in this chamber would also have some chairs for his guests and business partners. And if you notice, he can afford a mirror in his chamber. Another nice Chinese motif, the phoenix bird up there in the frame. So it's all very fashionable. That's a period quilt. The whole cloth quilt is on the bed. in between the two pieces of cloth is a bat of carded wool, and so you need to keep the stitches really close together in order to keep the wool in place. And the ladies that work here are recreating a whole cloth quilt, but it's going kind of slow because they don't work on it all the time. But that's a lot of stitches, all by hand, and it's fun to experiment. I think I still like to live in the modern world.